I never imagined my simple words would leave a billionaire speechless. I will never forget that day. The air was thick with tension, every eye in the room pinned on the two of us. My heart raced in my chest, a wild drumbeat as if trying to drown out the whirlwind of emotion swirling inside me. There he was, Ethan Blakey, a titan of industry, known for his sharp suits and even sharper tongue. His presence commanded attention. The polished wood of the boardroom table gleamed under the dim lights, reflecting the unease that settled like a fog around us. I stood there, gripping my notes tightly, my palms clammy. I had never thought I'd end up face to face with someone like him. My job was just to give a presentation, a small detail in the grand tapestry of his corporate empire. But in that moment, everything shifted. I could see the faintest crack in his composed exterior, the slightest flicker in his icy blue eyes. A shiver ran down my spine. I had touched a nerve. Suddenly, the weight of my words became heavy. "Your obsession with numbers is suffocating the creativity in this company," I had blurted out. Silence followed like a weight dropping in a vast chasm, and I felt every heartbeat echoing through my body. A gasp rippled at the edges of the room. Heads turned, eyes widened. How dare I? I could already feel the heat creeping up my neck, the stares boring into me. Ethan's expression morphed. Was it anger? Disbelief? I couldn't read him. His reputation as a ruthless businessman was known far and wide. But in that small, suffocating space, he looked almost human. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between Ethan and me, like spectators at a gladiatorial match. I could hear my breath quicken, each inhale a sharp reminder of the risk I'd taken. I had spent countless nights plotting this presentation, dreaming of a future where my boldness paid off. My mother's dusty encouraging words echoed in my mind. Sometimes it's the daring that changes everything. But standing there, I realized I was not just risking my career. I was clashing with a force of nature. The tension hummed like a live wire. As I stood before him, time wove a strange tapestry of suspense. It felt as if the world had paused, holding its breath for his reaction. My stomach churned. What came next would either secure my place in this cutthroat world or send me crashing down in flames. Would he rage against my audacity? Or would he see the glimmer of truth in my words? I braced myself, heart pounding. This was a gamble of monumental proportions, and I was all in. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The room held its breath, an electric stillness lingering long after my words hung in the air like ink blots on a pristine page. Ethan's gaze anchored on mine, piercing yet bewildered. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if I had crossed an invisible line, if my audacity had backfired spectacularly. Then, slowly, the tension seemed to twist. Something unfamiliar flickered in his expression, a mixture of surprise and perhaps admiration. I didn't know. But before I could delve deeper into my thoughts, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, inviting the quiet storm of his contemplation. The stern determination that had defined his persona felt almost fragile in this moment, revealing layers I had never anticipated uncovering. "Your perspective is refreshing," he said at last, his voice steady but uncharacteristically soft. The board members around the table shifted and cleared their throats, their faces a mosaic of confusion and intrigue, still clutching tightly to their corporate armor. "Thank you," I managed to utter, though the words stumbled out, thick with disbelief. The unexpected kindness from the billionaire sent a flicker of warmth spiraling through the frigid air. Who knew that the iron-willed Ethan Blake could respond to criticism with such grace? But just as hope settled into my chest, the board's disapproval rose like thunderclouds. "How dare you challenge Mr. Blake?" A voice cut through the fragile moment like glass shattering. It was Marla, the senior vice president, whose disdain for my youthful ambition was notorious. Her words sparked an icy wind, and I felt my confidence waver. "We are not here to listen to some upstart's opinions," continued another board member, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is a business meeting, not a forum for radical ideas." Their eyes glinted with judgment, and my pulse quickened. Ethan held up a hand, silencing his colleagues. "Perhaps that's exactly the kind of meeting we need," he replied, his tone brokering between authority and vulnerability. A cryptic smile graced his lips, and I felt a warmth burgeon within me, emboldening my resolve. As the board reluctantly debated the merits of my proposal, the dialogue shifted into a push and pull of ideation, and just for a moment, my heart soared. I shared more thoughts, pouring my passion into every word, while fear established a fine line behind my bravado. Listening to the back and forth, I felt alive. It was invigorating. Hours later, after the meeting adjourned, I gathered my things and stepped into the buzzing hallway, my mind still racing. Had I really managed to shake the foundations of this staid corporate establishment? Despite the backlash, there was something intoxicating about the experience. But the elation was short-lived. My footsteps slowed as I turned the corner and caught sight of Ethan by the window, his back turned toward me, silhouetted against the sprawling skyline. A storm brewed behind his seemingly calm demeanor, a silent brewing conflict emanating from the way he clenched his jaw and narrowed his eyes as he looked out into the horizon. "Is everything okay?" I ventured, treading carefully as I approached him. He turned, and the vulnerability that flashed across his face momentarily took me by surprise. "I have to admit, I didn't see that coming," he said, his voice low. "But you should know, challenging the status quo isn't without consequences." "Not here. Are you worried about how they'll react?" I asked, curiosity edging out caution. His laugh was hollow, a melodic low note that ignited shadows in the space between us. "Am more worried about how I react." He fell silent, the weight of those words hanging like a tender thread between us. It felt intimate, like whispering confidences in a crowded room. I had always perceived him as a fortress, but here, glimpses of his uncertainty ignited a spark of hope within me. Maybe he wasn't as untouchable as I thought. Before I could process the implications of that thought, his phone buzzed, pulling him from our moment. He answered it sharply, a renewed facade plastered across his face. My heart sank. "Yes, I understand. It'll be there," he said before hanging up and turning back to me, though a different light danced in his eyes. "I have to go." Just like that, the intimacy that had started forming reverted to that hard corporate demeanor I had grown familiar with. "I know this is new territory," he continued, almost as an afterthought, "but don't get too comfortable." With that, he walked away, and I felt the space between us expand like an empty chasm. As I stood there, heart racing and breathless from our brief encounter, the realization sunk in. I had awoken something in him, something dangerous yet hopeful. And while I wrestled with the tumult of emotions left in his wake, an unsettling idea flickered. What if I had ignited a conflict not only within the boardroom, but within Ethan himself, something far larger than either of us could control? And what if that conflict would carry unforeseen consequences, ones that might shatter everything I had come to learn about ambition and love? As I stared out at the city, feeling both the thrill and the pinch of uncertainty, I sensed that this was merely the beginning. The following days blended into each other, a whirlwind of meetings, assessments, and unending emails. I felt the electric charge of my confrontation with Ethan lingering in the air, like the scent of impending rain. With every encounter, I battled the urge to revisit that moment, to pull at the threads of our conversation though I knew better. Curiosity about Ethan unfolded with every glance, and yet, with excitement came the weight of uncertainty, an anchor dragging me deeper into murky waters. In the midst of this chaos, I sought solace in the corners of the office. I discovered a small cafe just a few blocks down that buzzed with the energy of artists and thinkers, a space where conversations floated through the air like balloons. I would sit there, sketching ideas, and allowing the noise to drown out the doubts echoing in my mind like a persistent drumbeat. One afternoon, I was lost in thought as I scribbled on a napkin when a familiar figure pulled me from my reverie. "Mind if I join you?" It was Maya, one of the marketing leads. Her radiant smile, framed by a cascade of dark curls, washed over me like sunlight breaking through the clouds. Of course. I smiled back, grateful for the unexpected warmth. As she settled in, we exchanged stories about our lives outside the office walls. Despite the shimmering tension that loomed within me, Maya's vivacity quelled my unease. When the conversation veered toward the board meeting, she leaned closer, eyes sparkling with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "You know, the way you challenged Ethan? That was something else. It's not every day someone stands up to him." I chuckled lightly, a nervous laugh. "I don't think I stood up to him, just expressed an opinion." "No, you did more than that. You made him reconsider. Not many people can say they've done that. Maybe it's the hint of something more?" she teased, nudging me playfully. It surprised me how her words felt like a gentle prodding of my heart, encouraging me to unwrap the layers of my feelings. Before I could respond, laughter erupted from the table behind us, and I turned my head instinctively, half expecting to see Ethan's imposing figure laughing off the clever banter. Instead, my heart sank a little when I saw Marla, leading a small group of board members. They were deep in conversation, occasionally casting sideways glances toward our table, the air heavy with a tension that felt familiar. Maya noticed my distraction. "Ignore them. They don't define you," she said with conviction. "You have talent. You know that, right?" Though her words felt like a balm on a wound, they also made me painfully aware of the critical stares from the other table walls. "It's hard not to let it get in my head," I admitted, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly, unsure of how to silence the creeping doubts. "Then let's shake them off. How about we go to that new exhibit downtown after work? Art has a way of igniting inspiration," she suggested with an infectious enthusiasm. I hesitated for a moment, but the thought sparked a flicker of hope. "Yeah, why not?" As the day wound down, a strange excitement filled the air. Just as I reached for my bag, my phone buzzed with an alert. A message from Ethan flashed on the screen. "We need to talk. Meet me at the office in 30 minutes. My pulse quickened, anxiety wrestling with the thrill building within me. What could he possibly want? Did he regret our conversation, or was this something deeper simmering beneath the surface? I glanced at my reflection in the cafe window, taking a moment to gather my scattered thoughts. The office was quiet, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly like distant stars as I approached Ethan's workspace. The shadows pooled in the corners held their breath, as if acknowledging the weight of what was about to unfold. He sat at his desk, shoulders taut, staring intently at a document before him. The tension in the room clung to me as I stood before him, my heart aching to read the emotion so cleverly concealed behind his professional facade. When he looked up, his eyes held a tempest, dark and turbulent. "I wanted to discuss your proposal. There are implications I think we should consider." A flicker of hope ignited, only to be doused by the gravity of his words. "What kind of implications?" Ethan drummed his fingers on the desk, his gaze unwavering. "Some of the board members are not pleased with your approach. Your ideas suggest a shift away from our established practices. There's talk of revisiting your position here." As those words shattered the fragile resolve I'd cultivated, I felt the world teetering around me. So they want to remove me? I managed to stammer, the sting of betrayal biting at my core. Not necessarily, but his voice faltered, and for a split second, I could have sworn I saw regret flash across his face. But it was gone before I could hold on to it. The pulsating tension morphed into a punch of reality. Here I stood facing a man who cradled both power and uncertainty, who might either save my place or bury it, and I was complicit in the storm brewing within him, one that could unravel both our fates. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered, the weight of the question heavy on my chest, as if the words themselves might tip the balance of everything we had begun to explore. He opened his mouth to respond, but the distant ringing of his phone shattered the moment. He shot me an apologetic look and answered it sharply, cursing under his breath. A heavy pit formed in my stomach, the feeling of impending change enveloping us both like thick fog. "Listen," he said into the phone, desperation lacing his tone. "We can't let emotions guide our decisions." But I couldn't hear the rest above the pounding of my heart. Emotions guided us, yes, they pulled us together and apart, teetering on the edge of possibilities unseen. The chasm that separated our worlds loomed large, and as uncertainty hung within the air between us, I fought against the creeping fear that whatever fragile connection we had was under threat of unraveling completely. And there, amid the tumult of business and the clamor of emotions, I realized this was not an ordinary meeting, it was a reckoning, and our choices would resonate longer than either of us imagined. The hum of the office faded into a deafening silence, punctuated only by Ethan's escalating tone on the phone. The air weighed heavily with unresolved tension. I stood frozen, feelings of dread coiling tighter in my chest, cringing at the truth I was trying to ignore. This confrontation wasn't just about work, it was about us and the uncharted territory that lay ahead. "Ethan," I whispered, but he was too engrossed in the call, losing himself amidst professional demand. I wanted to shake him, to break through the wall he was building, but something deeper held me back, the fear that my words had already begun to unravel the delicate bond between us. I retreated, too aware of the impending storm swirling around us. I needed air, something to quell the banging in my mind and the erratic rhythm of my heart. Stepping into the hallway, I fumbled for my phone, my hand shaking as my fingers slipped over the screen. Each notification felt like a pinprick, and I hesitated to read Maya's messages, wanting desperately to hold on to the fleeting slivers of joy she had ignited in me. As I leaned against the cool wall, I tried to center myself, thinking of the exhibit Maya had mentioned, looking forward to the beauty and inspiration it could offer. But the thought felt heavy, tinged with the reality of my faltering career and the chaos Ethan and I had created. The hope for better days swirled like confetti before being caught by doubt. My phone buzzed again, pulling me from the depths of my thoughts. It was a message from Maya, excited for the exhibit. "Just got off the call with my artist friend. Can't wait to introduce you." The excitement in her words felt like a lifeline, a reminder that there was beauty in connection even when tangled in uncertainty. I exhaled slowly, preparing to return to Ethan, when the office doors swung open. Marla stepped out, her expression one of triumph, the kind that brims with conquest rather than camaraderie. For a fleeting moment, her eyes locked onto many an electric current passed between us, not unlike the currents I felt with Ethan, trying to eavesdrop. "Are we?" She smirked, her tone slicing through the air. "I suggest you tread carefully. You know how Ethan feels about people who shake things up. I don't need your advice," I shot back instinctively, my heart racing not just from her words, but from the continued blurring stake I had in Ethan's world. Marla shrugged, her confidence unwavering. "Suit yourself, but it's your career on the line. Remember that." I watched her walk away, an unsettling silence following in her wake. Although I wanted to dismiss her words, the hint of menace behind them tugged at my insides. Summoning a flicker of courage, I steeled myself to confront the inevitable. As I stepped back into the office, I caught Ethan's gaze just as he hung up the phone. His expression shifted, shadows pooling in the depths of his eyes, as they bore into me, mirroring the storm of emotions within. "Sorry about that," he began, his voice tinged with a hint of awkwardness, as though the raw intensity of our previous conversation was thickening the air between us. "I didn't mean to. No, this isn't easy, Ethan," I interrupted, grappling with vulnerability that bubbled to the surface. "But we have to talk about what's at stake. It's not just my job, it's us." His breath caught, and for a moment, the flicker of a smile crossed his lips, one that spoke of past exchanges yet uncharted. He took a step forward, and I felt a magnetic pull that dared me to cross the line of professionalism we both seemed hesitant to breach, hands trembling at the precipice of what might unfold. Then, the phone rang again, and the brief moment of connection shattered. Ethan cursed again, muttering under his breath as he glanced at the caller ID, visibly torn between the weight of responsibility and the echo of what we needed to confront. "It's the board," he said, his expression hardening. "I have to take this." Panic surged as he backed away, my voice rising with it. "Ethan, please! We can't keep pretending it's not happening." He paused, torn between duty and desire. And in that split second, I thought I might see him surrender to the moment, just long enough to realize that he, too, hung in the balance between the worlds we navigated. But then the moment slipped from our grasp, turned and answered the phone, words spilling into the air like a threat. "Yeah, I understand the implications. You'll have to consider the options." There was a light in his gaze, but it was dimmed by the gravity of responsibility, nothing more than a flickering candle against a tempest of expectations. As I stood there, heart racing, I felt my hopes fracture into 1,000 pieces. The warmth and hope I clung to faded, swallowed by the reality that the challenge ahead was greater than either of us had fathomed. And as the clock ticked with relentless severity, I realized that good intentions could be darkened by the weight of ambition, and together we might either rise or fall. Suddenly, the office door swung open once more, and a figure stepped inside, unexpected, unannounced, and breaking the threadbare tension stretched too thin. It was a sense of familiarity wrapped in urgency, and as my eyes met his, I understood that while I had tried to navigate what we so desperately needed, a new layer of conflict was just beginning to unfold. "Ethan, the board just made a decision," the newcomer announced, and I felt the full force of impending change embedding itself in my heart, drawing us into its chaotic embrace without mercy. The room fell silent as Ethan's body stiffened, his focus shifting entirely to the newcomer, whose name hung on the tip of my tongue, but was yet to register with the anxiety flooding my mind. The tall, imposing figure stood framed by the doorway, a whirlwind of change and unspoken power that seemed determined to reshape everything we had carefully constructed, or so it felt. "Michael," Ethan addressed him, his tone a delicate balance of respect and irritation. "What do you mean the board made a decision?" "Investment proposal," Michael continued, his expression betraying nothing. "They have concerns, serious ones. They're pulling funding on several projects. Yours included." My heart sank into the pit of my stomach as Ethan turned pale, the color draining from his face. The chaos I had feared was manifesting before my eyes. All my musings about our future looked dull and shadowed, no longer emerging from a place of hope, but facing the cold starkness of the truth. "Michael, they can't do this," Ethan said, voice low, barely concealing his growing panic. "We've spent months preparing. There are commitments in place." "They don't care," Michael interrupted, setting his jaw firm. "And frankly, neither do I. The board wants stability, and anything that disrupts the balance will be dealt with swiftly. You know the stakes." My breath caught as I absorbed the gravity of his words. Just like that, everything we'd been working toward, Ethan's ambitious dreams, our entangled lives teetered on the brink of ruin, swept away by a single decision. I stood frozen, the walls of the office closing in, a sudden drop in temperature causing shivers to chase down my spine. Ethan's dark eyes found mine, a wildfire of emotions prowling across his face: fear, frustration, and what might have been desperation if the shadows hadn't cloaked it. In that moment, I saw not just the weight of his career crashing down, but the consequence that hovered over us both like a loaded gun. "Ethan," I whispered softly, taking a step closer, but he remained rooted in place, caught between shock and his instinct to defend all he had worked for. "Stay out of this," he muttered, half a warning, half a plea. "It's not your problem." "But it is," I argued, the fire in my chest igniting against the cool chill of his detachment. "If you go down, we both go down. Can't you see that?" He opened his mouth to respond, but the words seemed to get lost, tangled in the whirlwind of new information bombarding us. Michael broke the electric tension, stepping further inside, his gaze sweeping past us to the gathering of files on Ethan's desk as if assessing potential collateral damage. "You need to get your head in the game, Ethan. The board convenes in 30 minutes, and they'll want to hear your proposal." Now, Ethan took a deep breath, his shoulders rolling back as he shifted gears with forced intensity. "He'll handle it." "Not without a clear strategy," Michael pressed, his tone shifting from indifferent to urgent. "You don't have time to waste trying to fix this alone." Frustration bubbled inside me, undesired anger straining to break free. "What if we worked on it together?" I blurted out, the suggestion hanging in the air like an ill-timed storm cloud. Both men turned toward me, surprise evident on their faces. Ethan's brow furrowed, disbelief flashing in his eyes before morphing into an inkling of hope only for a fleeting moment. "Are you serious?" he asked, the weight of dread tied to the prospect of accepting help. "This is my career, Elise. I can't let anyone else in on the details." "It's too risky." "Risky is where we are now," I countered. "The board doesn't need to know how the proposal evolved, as long as the end goal is clear and we make it shine." Michael snorted, his skepticism palpable. "And what makes you think you can handle it?" Before I could retort, Ethan's voice cut in with a restrained intensity that made the air feel charged. "Because she knows me better than anyone else. Together, we can find a way to turn this around." The room held its breath, a silence settling that felt oddly soothing amidst the chaos, like standing still before an advancing tide. Yet even as the rush of adrenaline coursed through my veins, I felt exposed, knowing that any misstep might fracture not only business, but the fragile clarity I had fought hard to maintain with Ethan. Just then, Maya's words echoed in my mind, the gentle nudge toward creativity and almost nostalgic reminder of something beautiful. "You can do it together. Being vulnerable is not a weakness. It's a bridge." In that moment of resolution, however, as I reached for Ethan's gaze, I saw his reluctance flicker, shadows playing trips of uncertainty across his features, and felt the air turn heavy with his doubt. The flickering candle of our hope dimmed just slightly under the pressure of unforeseen choices we still had to make, and as Michael stepped forward, initiating a strategy discussion based on a disaster that was already unfolding, I realized that the sunset of our ambition was about to dawn on a darker horizon, one where failure was not simply a possibility, but a looming specter ready to claim us both. The sound of the door creaking open brought my thoughts crashing back, the sudden image of an unknown figure slicing into our discussion, the tension shattering together in a gasp of disbelief. I turned, bracing for the revelation that could either bind us together or tear us apart. What lay behind the door was a twist I could never have anticipated, one that would pull the threads of my hopes tighter, weaving a new pattern of conflict that would amplify the stakes for us all. As I caught a glimpse of the newcomer stepping into the light, the words lodged in my throat turned from uncertainty to sheer panic. "Ethan, I'm back," a familiar voice rang out, and I felt the world tilt beneath me as reality warped and shifted, changing everything. Uncertainty and grudging clarity warring around us, leaving me gasping, a mere witness at the start of a treacherous new chapter. When the words flowed from that familiar voice, reality twisted into an intricate knot of confusion. It wasn't just any voice that echoed off the walls of Ethan's office. It was Rachel, his ex-partner, A woman who carried the weight of shared history in her eyes, a past that had been both their sanctuary and their choking ground. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing us in an emotionally charged cage. I felt as if I had stepped into a raw nerve. The way Ethan's expression shifted from surprise to guarded contemplation set my heartbeat racing. There was a history wrapped around every glance he dared to cast in her direction, a chemistry that fizzed in the air, potent and electric. As she walked further into the room, I instantly imagined the intricacies of their past flooding back like an untamed river, threatening to drown the fragile optimism I had clung to for dear life. "Rachel," Ethan muttered, as if trying to convince himself he wasn't dreaming. "What are you doing here? I came to resolve some important things." She stepped forward, her gaze persistent, a resolute fire igniting in her chest that whispered of unspoken intentions. "I want to help you, Ethan." I saw what happened. What the board did, it's not right. My back straightened as I stood next to him, a silent alarm ringing in my ears. I had always feared this day would come, the day when Rachel might return, sprawling her idealism like a blanket over the reality I had begun to embrace with Ethan. Her offer, though veiled kindness, felt like a rock hurled into the fragile foundation we had started to build together. "Help?" Ethan echoed, a hint of bitterness lacing his voice. "After all this time away, you think that's what I need?" The tension crackled, filling the space with an unmistakable energy. I could feel the walls closing in on me, constricting my breath into tight, painful gasps. This was a mistake, I thought, a shadow that had no right to walk back into our lives and the dream we had tried so hard to create. Rachel took a breath, as if steadied by the tempest. "I know you can't do it alone, Ethan. The proposal is important, but you can't ignore the resources I can provide. I have connections, insights into the board's real motivations. They want stability, and together we can give them that." He shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the conflict raging beneath his steadfast facade. Something about her presence ignited a spark of nostalgia. She had once stood beside him, the creative force that fueled his ambitions. But time had shifted the landscape. Now, I was the one cheering for him, the woman who had ventured into his heart even as uncertainties lay tangled at our feet. But at what cost? I interjected, stepping forward, my voice steady but infused with rising anger. "You think we can nostalgically rewrite the past? Rachel, you left. You chose to walk away, and now you're back, acting as if you can just pick up where you left off." Ethan turned toward me, his confusion morphing into frustration that burst forth as he retorted, "This is not about you and me. This is about survival, Elise. Could you grasp that?" His defense felt like a punch that cracked open a fracture between us, widening the chasm of doubt. Each word dug deeper, chipping away at the growing foundation of trust one desperately wanted to build. I took a steadying breath, feeling the weight of his words pressing down on me, the thrill of our alliance suddenly feeling unsteady. "I never said it was solely about us, Ethan." I snapped back, the fire igniting my cheeks. "It's about you, me, and our future. But if you allow Rachel to dive back in, how can you expect to keep that future clear of doubt and confusion?" Rachel stepped forward, the determination in her eyes transforming into something more vulnerable. "I'm not here to take him from you. I just want to help Ethan realize his dreams." "Isn't that what you want for him, too?" Her words hung like church bells in the heavy silence that followed, resonating with an echo of truth that I couldn't entirely dismiss. The heart of the matter rested on shifting foundation. Could I truly set aside my insecurities and uncertainties for Ethan's success? My instincts screamed for self-preservation, urging me to shield him from the past, while a small flicker of hope begged to explore the possibility of collaboration. "I don't need your help," Ethan finally said, though the tremor in his voice suggested otherwise. "I've got this." But doubt clouded his conviction, the tension stretching thin, and in that moment, a heavy chill settled over us all. As Rachel stood there, steadfast, revealing the lengths she was willing to traverse for Ethan. The rift in our fragile reality grew. I sensed a change, a diversion of trust that clawed at me when what I desperately sought was unity. I need you to be honest with yourself, Ethan. You don't just have to win back the board. You have to own your future, Rachel asserted, her voice steady, yet layered with a tone of compassion. He turned to me again, searching for something solid in my gaze, yet the uncertainty lingered like a fog that refused to lift. How could I bolster his courage when my own was faltering beneath the weight of unrelenting pressure? As the ticking clock echoed against the suffocating silence, leaving us fewer than 30 minutes to create a lifeline from chaos, a sudden realization gripped me. The stakes surged higher, a treacherous game fueled by emotional confessions and buried aspirations. There was an unyielding truth that started to churn within me. Rachel's return might be the very key to unlocking the solution we desperately needed, yet it could just as easily spell ruin for our already fraying connection. The horizon darkened further with each lingering second, and as Ethan squared his shoulders and started to weigh his options, a deep-rooted fear knotted within me. I could either step back and let him navigate this tumultuous sea, or I could push forward and risk losing myself in the storm. Ethan, wait, I began, just as a shot of clarity struck through the haze of tension. But before I could finish my thought, he turned away, his chin set defiantly. The clock ticked louder, drowning out the rush of my heartbeat as uncertainty loomed larger than life, the final decision teetering on the abyss between hope and despair. And then, just as the words were about to spill from my lips, a sliding sound interrupted me, a faint rustling from the open door I hadn't even noticed had swung back. A figure stepped inside, their face hidden by shadows but unmistakably familiar. "Sorry to interrupt," came the unmistakable voice of Jenna, Ethan's confidant and the lender of his ambitions. "But I think there's something crucial we need to discuss." An unshakable dread nestled in my chest, leaving me breathless as I realized we were far from finished battling the demons that haunted us. As Jenna's gaze swept across the turmoil in the room, the realization struck me with an almost electric shock. Nothing would ever be the same again. The atmosphere thickened with unspoken words as Jenna stood silently in the doorway, her expression mirroring the turmoil swirling in the room. Those eyes wide and alert caught the nuances of our fragile exchange, her presence both a welcome distraction and an alarming reminder of the consequences we faced. Ethan's shoulders shifted, the tension in him coiling tighter, while Rachel's vibrant energy faded into an anxious stillness. Jenna's sudden arrival, a ghost from a time when secrets were shared over late-night ideas and laughter, felt like a double-edged sword, one that threatened the embers of our fragile alliance with its sharp edges. "Jenna," Ethan finally managed, disbelief sparking in the depths of his eyes. "What is it?" "This isn't a good time." Her focus remained steady, like a lighthouse cutting through fog, as if she had forgotten the emotional whirlwind brewing in the room. "I understand that, but I just got off the phone with the board," she blurted out, her tone urgent, pushing through the haze that enveloped us. Rachel shifted, her immediate worry reflected in the way she crossed her arms. It felt contentious, this mix of past and present, where emotions clashed like currents in a wild river. It didn't help that the clock relentlessly ticked on, marking our dwindling time as a backdrop to the uncertainty that cloaked us. "What do they want?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with apprehension. Jenna hesitated, her gaze darting to me before landing back on Ethan. "They're not comfortable moving forward with your proposal the way it stands. They want significant changes, or they will pull support." The words struck like thunder, reverberating against the walls of our already fragile hopes. I leaned back against the desk, feeling its cold surface press into my spine, a stark reminder of reality's weight. It felt unbearable, the pressure and anxiety surrounding us intensifying. Ethan's face paled, the fight of determination behind his eyes wavering. This was not just about navigating boardroom politics. It was the crux of his ambitions, a measure of his worth echoing in every word they dared to utter. I reached out, a hand brushing against his forearm, a small gesture to ground him, to let him know he wasn't alone. What changes do they want? He pressed, desperation lacing his tone as if it might unravel the knot tightening around our lives. It's about the financials, Jenna continued, folding her hands together as if it would stave off the storm. They want more transparency, but they also hinted at a potential merger with another company. They need someone to blame if things go south, and you need to be ready for that. An icy chill swept through me, twisting my stomach. Mergers usually meant job losses, and the mere thought of Ethan being backed into a corner shrouded in political games sent adrenaline racing through my veins. Rachel's earlier words echoed back at Mesh had the insight into board politics, the connections to leverage against this new threat. My heart raced at the desperate choice before Ethan. I caught Rachel's eye, and for the first time, the shared challenge we faced seemed to unite us, a questioning bridge forged through mutual concern. I turned my attention to Ethan, watching him wrestle with the onslaught of information and its implications. How do we pivot? He asked, the conviction returning to his voice, but it was layered beneath a thick veil of uncertainty. Rachel leaned closer, a spark of resolve igniting in her stance, her voice low and filled with purpose. If we work together, we can present a new proposal that highlights the strengths of both your ideas and the stability of the merger. That way, we can position yourself at the helm, create a narrative where you're not just one of them, but a leader. Ethan's brows knitted together, wrestling with the weight of that suggestion. As his deep brown eyes flicked over to meet mine, I felt the storm brewing beneath his calm facade, uncertainty refracting like light through shattered glass. He wasn't just faced with Jessica's mercurial insights and Rachel's passionate intentions. He faced the looming reality of whether he could swallow his pride and allow this new alliance to form, even if it might mean including the one person who had once walked away. A flicker of panic raced through me, igniting a wildfire of anxiety. My heart thrummed loudly in my chest as I weighed our budding connection against the certainty of a past that loomed like looming thunderclouds. Ethan, are you sure about this? I asked, my voice quivering with the weight of my concern, mingling protectively with hope. This could change everything. But just as the thought settled into uneasy silence, an unmistakable tone interrupted the air. My cell phone vibrated relentlessly in my pocket. I glanced down, noting the screen with a familiar name flashing, a name I hadn't seen in years. My stomach dropped as I hesitated, the weight of the decision heavy. Who is it? Jenna asked, brow raised in concern, sensing the shift. Ignoring her question, I glanced back up to Ethan, who was studying me intently, uncertainty flickering in the depths of his expression. Rachel seemed to gauge the time lapse, sensing the turmoil brewing around us, as if it mirrored the storm within. Need to take this, I muttered, shaking my head, caught between the gravity of the moment and the warning cry of my heart. I stepped aside, unable to shake the feeling that something monumental was about to break in the room, something that could change the trajectory of everything we had fought for. The breath I drew felt shallow as I answered the call, the words in my throat hanging heavily, threatening to swallow me whole. And then the voice on the other end echoed back like a siren. Elise, we need to talk. It's about your father. That one statement shattered the fragile equilibrium in the room, as if a bolt of lightning had struck through my heart. All our concerns, Rachel's return, Ethan's desperation, the looming threat faded into a backdrop as the realities of the past bore down on me like a suffocating weight. I glanced back at Ethan and Rachel, their faces carved in a mix of confusion and concern, and felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. The true battle was just beginning, and I had no idea how to face it. Elise's pulse raced, echoing the chaotic thoughts swirling in her mind. The past, a realm she had buried deep, had resurfaced with a vengeance. About my father? She asked, feeling her voice tremble with a delicate mixture of dread and curiosity. Each heartbeat felt like a drum signaling impending chaos. Yes, it's urgent, the voice insisted, a tinge of anxiety vibrating through the line. "You need to come to Los Angeles. It's complicated, but you should know he's—" The words hung in the air, heavy with unuttered implications. Elise's eyes flitted between Ethan and Rachel, their expressions an unsettling cocktail of concern and confusion. She could see Ethan's jaw tighten, a flicker of pain reflected in his dark eyes, but she couldn't bring herself to explain. "Not yet. Can't we talk about it here?" she pressed, desperate to not break this tenuous thread keeping her glued to this moment. "I need to understand." The edge in the caller's voice shifted, becoming more empathetic, as though sensing her distress. "Elise, please. There are things you don't know, and you need to hear them from me, not a text or phone call. It's serious." And just like that, the room dissolved into silence, her heartbeat thumping in her ears, drowning out every other sound. Behind her, she could sense Ethan's confusion, a kind of disappointment mingling with his persistent hope. She had walked into a storm of conflict, only to realize she was now at its eye, facing the swirling chaos surrounding her family. "I'll come," Elise finally said, her resolve faltering but her decision adamant. "Just tell me when." The finality of those words felt like a death knell to the fragile peace they had attempted to hold onto. As she ended the call, the fragments of her life began to piece themselves back together. The distance she had maintained from her father's world now felt like a chasm ready to swallow her whole. She turned slowly to face Ethan, his vulnerability evident, demanding clarity in a moment filled with questions. "What was that about?" Ethan asked, voice steady, but Elise could sense the undercurrent. His hope was slowly crumbling as the truth loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. "It's about my father," she replied quietly, unsure how to navigate the complexities of her past while standing on the precipice of a future that seemed increasingly fragile. "I have to go to him." A flicker of anger passed over Ethan's features, snapping into place as pressure mounted between them. "Is that really what you want? After everything that happened, do you think facing him will solve anything?" Rachel stood quietly for a moment, surveying the tension, her eyes flickering between them like a pendulum. "Maybe it's a necessary step for you, Elise," she said softly, her voice a stabilizing force. "You can't escape it forever. I know, but it's complicated," Elise admitted, half-heartedly clutching her phone as if it could anchor her amidst the emotional tempest brewing. "I had hoped," she faltered, looking at Ethan. "I thought I could work with you, and we could face this together before what?" Ethan's voice cracked, frustration spilling over. "Before you're pulled back into a world that nearly broke you." "What about what we were building, Elise?" Rachel's eyes widened slightly, sensing the weight of his words. Elise took a deep breath, feeling tears stinging at the corners of her eyes. It wasn't just her battle. It was a moment that could fracture everything they'd fought to forge. "I want to face this, Ethan," she replied, looking into his eyes with earnest conviction. "But I can't pretend my past doesn't exist. It's part of me, and it's asking for my attention in ways I can't ignore anymore." Ethan opened his mouth, but then he closed it, pulling back as if he recognized the futility of forcing Elise to navigate a labyrinth of emotions unaccompanied. "You don't have to do this alone," he said finally, the edge of anger softening into concern. "I'll stand by you no matter what happens." At that moment, a flicker of warmth ignited between them, creating a small, fleeting sense of hope. But reality came crashing down as Jenna spoke, again breaking the spell. "You both need to consider the implications of this," she warned solemnly. "If you go back to your father, it might expose Ethan to all the chaos you've been trying to escape. The board, the merger, they're connected." Elise's heart sank deeper as Jenna's words painted the picture of repercussions unfolding like a nightmare before her eyes. The tangled web of family and ambition had suddenly tightened around them, threatening to choke every hope she harbored. Just when the weight of it all felt most suffocating, Rachel shifted, breaking the heavy silence with an unexpected suggestion. "What if I accompany you to Los Angeles?" I have some connections that might help ease the way, give you an edge. Insight into your father's world without bringing Ethan into the fray. Elise stared at Rachel, her heart skipping in surprise. You'd come with me? Of course. Rachel smiled softly, a flicker of warmth emanating from her. We're in this together, right? But even as the warmth of camaraderie settled over her, a new unease twisted in Elise's gut. Yes, she might have Rachel by her side, but the gravity of stepping back into a life filled with shadows, the possibility of confronting the time bombs her father had left behind weighed heavy. A sudden urgency to act overwhelmed her. Okay, let's set a time then, she said, forcing resolve back into her voice. Before things get any worse. As plans began to form, a disconcerting thought struck Elise. Her father could have information that might unravel everything she wished to protect, and for once, she felt genuinely afraid of stepping into that world. Just as they began to discuss logistics, a loud crash echoed from outside. Everyone froze, a collective breath held tight in anticipation. A moment later, the door burst open, a flustered aide rushing in, with a look of panic tarnishing his features. Ethan, there's been a development. The board is meeting early, and they want you there now. It's urgent. Ethan exchanged a glance with Elise, and she saw the flicker of fear in his eyes, the echo of all his hopes hanging precariously on a thread just as fragile as hers. As he moved toward the door, the air thickened with tension and unspoken acknowledgement. He'll be right behind you, he said, steeling himself just before he vanished into the hallway shadows. Elise's heart twisted painfully as she realized the true depth of their impending choices. That small spark of hope had just been thrust into uncertainty's jaws, and they might soon find themselves irrevocably changed. With Rachel beside her, and the echo of Ethan's determination fading into the distance, Elise couldn't help but wonder if this was the calm before an inevitable storm. Would they weather it together, or would the wild chaos upend everything they had fought to create? Elise sat in silence, the weight of Ethan's absence hanging heavily in the air. Rachel, sensing the tumultuous emotions swirling around them, turned her gaze to the window, watching as the world outside continued with its insistent bustle. The cars passed, headlights flickering like stars trapped in the night, a stark contrast to the chaos enveloping her heart. Are you okay? Rachel asked softly, breaking the quiet. I know it's a lot to take in. Elise attempted a nod, but the movement felt forced, as if acknowledging her feelings would make them too real. It's just everything's changing so quickly. I never imagined I'd have to confront my past like this, she admitted, unable to keep the tremor out of her voice. Rachel reached over, her hand warm and steady on Elise's. You don't have to go alone. I'll be there for you every step of the way. Elise tried to find comfort in Rachel's words, but the uncertainty loomed larger. The thought of facing her father, of all the unanswered questions, and wounds still fresh, gnawed at her. What if he revealed truths about her family that shattered everything she believed? I just keep thinking about what he might say. The things he might try to manipulate, Elise confided, her voice little more than a whisper. What if I'm not strong enough to handle it? Rachel's grip tightened slightly. You're stronger than you know. Remember when you took that leap with your career? You faced rejection and doubt, but you came out even more resilient. This is just another step. Elise sighed, grateful for Rachel's support but uncertain of her own strength. The looming trip to Los Angeles felt increasingly like a reckoning, a test of the person she was now against the memories of the girl who had fled. Yet, within the chaos, a small ember of resolve ignited. Perhaps this was the moment she could truly forge her identity. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive him? Elise asked, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. For everything he did, for tearing our family apart? I think forgiveness is complicated, Rachel replied thoughtfully. It might not even be about him, more about freeing yourself from the pain he imposed. You deserve peace, Elise. A deep breath filled Elise's lungs as she pondered Rachel's words. Perhaps forgiveness started with understanding, not condoning. It swirled around in her mind like a whisper of hope, encouraging her to break down the walls that had kept her from healing. But how could she open herself to someone who had caused so much hurt? Before she could unravel her thoughts further, the sudden vibration of her phone jolted her back to reality. A text flashed across the screen, illuminating the growing darkness of her doubts. It was from Ethan. "I'll wrap up what I can and meet you both afterward. Promise. Please don't worry." Elise's heart quickened. She could sense his determination, a fierce promise that their bond would survive this. But there was a flicker of fear that accompanied it. What if his efforts only exacerbated the chaos? "Ethan's message," she said, glancing up at Rachel. "He's really trying to hold everything together." Rachel nodded, her expression encouraging. "He believes in you, just as much as you believe in him." Remember that as minute turned to minute, they finalized their plans for the trip. Yet, as the shadows lengthened outside the window, a sense of dread settled low in Elise's stomach. Each passing moment felt like another step closer to the dark heart of her past, a past that held all the pieces she had fought to forget. That evening, as Elise prepared for their journey, her mind spiraled with possibilities of discomfort and confrontation. She rifled through her suitcase, packing her clothes and attempting to ignore the emotional baggage that curled tightly in her chest. Each item she folded and set aside felt weighted with the gravity of what lay ahead. But just as she was zipping up the last piece of luggage, a deafening crash echoed from the kitchen. The sound jolted her into action, dread blossoming in her chest as she rushed towards the commotion. "Rachel?" Elise called, sensing something had gone terribly wrong. She threw open the kitchen door to find her friend on the floor, a vase shattered around her feet, shards glinting dangerously. Elise rushed to Rachel's side, kneeling beside her. "What happened?" Panic shot through her voice, mingling with concern. Rachel looked up, wide-eyed. "I tripped him okay, just a little surprised." She held up her hand to show a small cut, the blood pooling at her fingertip. Elise's heart squeezed tighter. "You're not okay. Let me help." She gently took Rachel's hand, pressing a cloth against the wound. It was then that Rachel's eyes turned serious, the usual warmth vanishing in an instant. "Elise, this is not about just you going back to face your father. It's about everything that comes after. What if these cracks in our lives get wider when you go? What if you don't come back the same?" Elise fought back tears, realization hitting her like an icy wave. Rachel's fear echoed her own. "I've been so focused on the confrontation, I didn't think of the aftermath." "Neither did I," Rachel murmured, squeezing Elise's shoulder as if grounding her. "Promise me you'll be careful. Whatever you find, remember you have people here who care about you." "I will," Elise promised, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Before she could process the weight of Rachel's words fully, the phone buzzed again, this time with a news alert. Elise pulled it up on the screen, her heart racing when she read the headline. "Billionaire CEO's past resurfaces, family scandal threatens corporate stability." Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine. Could it be? Could this be the storm that threatened them all? As she read further into the article, a name caught her breath, a name that felt dangerously familiar. "Rachel, look." Elise thrust the phone toward her, dread pooling in her stomach as they both recognized the implications. This could change everything. Rachel's eyes turned wide, reflecting both fear and disbelief. Can it be true? Elise's heart raced. Whatever awaited her in Los Angeles had just escalated into a battle that could ensnare not just her, but everyone she cared about. The stakes were growing, and in that moment, she realized the path she faced would demand far more than she had prepared to give. What began as a journey into her past now threatened to unravel everything she held dear. Would she be ready, or had she already stepped into a darkness from which there was no escape? "When I received the news about my father, I thought it was a Kalinga chance to confront my past and reclaim my future. But now, standing amidst the wreckage of shattered glass, My courage wavered like the flickering flames of a dying candle. The implications of the earlier news shifted me from facing him, as a daughter seeking answers, to a defender racing to protect everything I had rebuilt. Rachel's eyes bore into mine, reflecting the turmoil we both felt, our intertwined destinies rooted in uncertainty. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered, her voice strained. If that story is true, they could come for us. It's a blizzard bearing down, and we're caught in its path. The gravity of her words sent tremors through my body. I thought setting out to meet my father meant embracing the past, but now it felt like an avalanche ready to bury me alive. Rachel, I need to talk to Ethan. We have to make a plan, I said, urgency snapping through me like electricity. Everything depended on how we navigated what awaited us. At that moment, fear morphed into resolve. We had to act quickly, and together, we wouldn't let the past claim any more of us. We hurried out of the house. My mind raced with possibilities. The gambit we were about to engage in had repercussions flowing from all sides. I felt trapped between the tight embrace of family loyalty and the rebellion of my heart. I had carved space in my life for Ethan, but what if this storm swept me away from him just as I was beginning to comprehend the beauty we could build together? The drive to the office felt interminable, each stoplight an agonizing pause. I sent off a quick message to Ethan. Need to talk ASAP. It's urgent. I could feel the butterflies of anxiety flapping violently in my stomach as I watched the city lights blur past. I could sense the turmoil surrounding us, a palpable tension rooting itself in the pit of my gut. When we pulled into the parking garage, we raced through the halls towards Ethan's office, the air crackling with anticipation and fear. The thought of confronting the mess swirling around us propelled me forward, but I could feel my pulse quicken with uncertainty. Was it possible we could emerge from this together? As we reached his door, I pushed it open without knocking, and the scene inside was a whirlwind of paper, frantic movements, and faces etched with stress. Ethan stood, flanked by Michael and a few other executives, the reality of the crumbling proposal hovering heavily in the air. When he saw me, his expression shifted, a brief flicker of surprise swiftly replaced by determination. "Elise!" he exclaimed, his voice slicing through the chaos like a beacon of strength. The heat of his gaze ignited something within me, a renewed sense of defiance that cut through the turbulence surrounding us. "Ethan, we need to talk." "It's about my father," I blurted, brushing past the onlookers, my heart racing as I closed the door behind me. This room, once a fortress of ambition, now felt like an arena teetering on the edge of chaos. "What did you find out?" Ethan stepped straight into my space, and I could see the rush of urgency in his eyes, sharpening focus where doubt had recently ruled. I took a deep breath, searching for the courage to share my fears. "There's been a family scandalous story that threatens everything. Rachel and I need to go to Los Angeles. If it's connected to us, we can't let them gain any ground." The room went silent as the implications landed with finality. Everyone turned to Ethan as if he had the power to steer the ship, but I could see he was navigating a storm of emotions himself. "Let me handle this," Ethan finally said, voice steady yet charged. "I won't let anyone threaten what we built." The way he looked at me, steadfast, unwavering, sent shivers of hope cascading through my veins. There was power in our connection, a tether that could withstand even the fiercest storms. "This isn't just about the company, Ethan. It's about our lives. We have to prepare for the worst, and that means confronting our realities head-on. Maybe we can use your father's connections. It could open doors." I could sense the tension shifting. It was risky territory, one that could either unify us or deepen the fractures threatening to entangle our lives. "I won't let you plunge into your past in isolation," he replied, the shadows of doubt chased away by conviction. "If we're diving in together, then let's arm ourselves with every possible tool. Crime can't become a family tradition, not now." As I stood with Ethan, the unsteady energy surrounding us transformed into a palpable force of solidarity. Our fears began to weave together into a tapestry threaded with resilience and every ounce of determination we could muster. It wouldn't be easy, but standing with him felt like forging new chains that tied our fates to each other. Rachel moved beside us, her spirit firm. Together, we'll confront whatever's hiding around the corner, she asserted. We can strategize, prepare for every revelation. Because when it comes down to it, we might be the wild cards that rewrite our story. We shared a brief moment of acknowledgement, the flames that flickered in our hearts igniting resolve. Each of us carrying burdens forged by past experiences, yet balancing them with the weight of our shared hope. With newfound determination, we settled into the chaos of negotiations, playing each step like a series of chess moves determining the fate awaiting us. As plans took shape and voices melded into strategy, I felt united with Ethan and Rachel like never before. But in the murmur of voices, I couldn't shake the feeling that the storm hadn't finished forming. And just as that thought settled in, the office door swung open again, ushering in a figure cloaked in authority, an unexpected arrival that sent chills down my spine. It was my father's attorney, a man who had dwelled in the shadows of my past far too long. "Elise," he said, voice steady but thick with tension, "we need to talk about what's coming." The storm was here, and I sensed in that instant that the eyes of my father and perhaps even the universe were bearing down on me. Death dragged a hand through my hair, reminding me that everything I had conjured might yet be placed at a perilous crossroads. But as long as Ethan and Rachel stood beside me, I was ready to fight. "Let's get to work," I replied, steadying my voice as my heart raced, ready for whatever was to come next. And in that moment, waiting for the inevitable confrontation, a fierce realization dawned within me. Forgiveness, while complicated, wouldn't be the back-end, imposite would be my weapon. Facing this head-on meant embracing the full weight of my past, while simultaneously wielding the hope of a resilient future. It meant understanding that every heart carried its own battles, but together, we were stronger than any chains binding us. We were about to rewrite our destinies. And this time, there would be no retreat.